Now, I'm from a small village called Burton-upon-Stather, population just a little over 1,000 people. It's almost like in Downton Abbey type of country. You know, it has the country pub, it has the country post office, and actually my mother was the curator of a large stately hall called Normanby Hall. So Downton Abbey rules that kind of a roost, that type of thing. Now Scunthorpe is a different picture altogether. Scunthorpe was famous for its steel. It was a steel town. When I was young, there was 3 major steel plants there, and today there's only 1. Like in most things during the Margaret Thatcher era, a lot of things closed down, and 2 of our steel plants closed down. The population of the town, Scunthorpe, would be somewhat similar to St. John's, maybe about 100, 120,000 people proper. And but after they closed down, instead of the mass employment, it was small cottage industry type of things that took over. But Burton-upon-Stather, the village where I grew up, it's Burton, which was on the top of the hill, and Stather was down below. So I lived on top of the hill, so I was looking down at the people on the Stather, so to speak. And then there was the River Trent going by. So it was very, very industrious in the way that the River Trent was there. And it used to bring a lot of stuff into the steelworks as well.
Tell me about your family. You said your mom worked at a stately home.
Yeah, yeah.
What about your dad? What did he do? My
dad was a carpenter by trade, and I felt a very good carpenter. He was. It wasn't just by the eye. He measured twice and cut once, so to speak, and there wasn't nothing he couldn't do. The furniture that he made was impeccable, that kind of a thing.
So he's what we'd call a finished carpenter.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. Very much so. He was amazed when he came over here that everybody was using electrical tools. And he built a deck on front of my house, and he did it all with hand tools. Wow. And he was the talk of the street in Mount Pearl there, because he was using hand tools, not one electric chainsaw or handsaw or anything. So he was certainly the talk, that's for sure.
Yeah. How's the deck doing? Is it still
solid as a rock? Solid as a rock, just like the islands.
Yeah. What about brothers and sisters?
I have one sister, and she's living in another village which is close to Burton-upon-Stather, in a place called Flixbury. It's only about 10 minutes drive, and she lives there, and she's fortunate. She lives in a beautiful home with about 3 acres of land, which is almost unheard of in the UK, so to speak, and has a nice paddock there. And she was a school teacher and just recently retired. But the beautiful part about my sister Karen and her husband, they had a narrowboat. So every time we went over to England, we would take our tandem, our bicycle, and cycle around. But they had a narrowboat that went on all the canals. And it's a different life altogether. You're going down all the country canals, and it's like the back roads to the UK, places that I'd never seen before. And even going through the major cities, you're going through the back end of the city as well, you know. So
we should explain a little bit about narrowboats, because some people in our audience may not know what we're talking about, but they're very narrow boats that are fairly easy to operate.
Fairly easy to, they're 6 feet wide.
Yeah.
They were primarily built during the Industrial Revolution. This was prior to the railways coming into power, and they could move mass loads. Some of them are between 40 feet to some of them up to 60 feet. And they went all through the countryside, so there was lots of locks, but hence they were only 6 feet wide.
Yeah.
And they were towed by a horse.
And now that they're for recreation, they have a little kitchenette in them, and some have a bedroom area, and some have a restroom, I guess.
Yeah.
It's all very small, but
it's just like a luxury RV, to be quite honest, like you see on the roads.
Yeah, you can have a lovely holiday.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the one my sister had was a 60-foot. It had 2 bedrooms in it, you know, and it has all the amenities, that's for sure.
I take it, since your dad had to build a deck for you, that you didn't inherit any of his carpentry skills.
I had the opportunity, but like where we live in England, there was three choices we could do. We could either go down the mines. We had two of the largest fishing ports, which was only 20 minutes away from where we live in the world, which was Grimsby and Hull. And we used to fish off Iceland until they put the gunboats out, and so we had to stop that. And the coal mines, of course. We had steel, fish, or coal mines. And so I could have gone into any of those three trades. I admired my dad for what he did. I am good with my hands, but the carpenter wasn't going to be my trade, that's for sure. That's for
Yes,
sure.
I was being a little bit unfair there because
Yeah.
you are, as they say, a dab hand at handling an ice pick.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. But I think I inherited that side of him, like using my hands. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, did you develop an interest in cookery when you were a little fellow, or do you remember?
Absolutely, absolutely. I left school when I was 16 and only just turned 16, and that was the age that you finished at that time. And I would say about the age I was 14, I liked cooking, you know. And I was bought a book one Christmas. It was called the Woman's Own Cookbook. And I still got that book today. You know, it's like my little Bible at the side of the bed, so to speak.
That wasn't Mrs. Beaton's cookbook,
No, it's just it's just a Woman's Own cookbook.
Okay.
It was, and a Woman's Own was a magazine in England, and so I used to dabble with a couple of recipes in there. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Do you remember what they were?
The first one I made was all my family was out. My mum was out, my dad was out, and my sister was out, and. You call them cookies over here, but I made a biscuit, and with strawberry jam in the centre of it, and I got all the ingredients out, and believe it or not, it worked. And I'm not a baker because it's a science, baking and pastry, and it worked. And when my mum came in, she could smell it in the house. It was beautiful, and she was quite taken back. So I think that was the start of the role. Right, you know,
well, speaking of your mom, I remember you telling me one time that you'll always remember her Sunday roast and the Yorkshire pudding and all the trimmings and all that.
Now you
tell us why that was so special for you.
It was, I always said, if I could cook as good as my mother, I'd call myself a chef. And the Sunday roast, or any meal per se, but the Sunday roast was very special because where we live in Lincolnshire, it borders Yorkshire, and we live on the Yorkshire pudding, especially for our Sunday lunch. And we would start off as an appetizer with onion gravy over it. We would have it with the main course, with our roast. And my mother was famous for all the vegetables. If there wasn't one, there was 7, 8, 9 vegetables, fresh vegetables, cooked hot on the plate. And it could be roast beef, it could be the roast chicken, the choice of the roast for the day. And then for dessert, we would have Yorkshire puddings again. The oven never stopped. We needed lots of drippings for making those Yorkshire puddings, and we would have Yorkshire pudding with butter and sugar on the top. And my nana, she used to make a raspberry vinegar, and we'd sprinkle, just drizzle a little bit of that raspberry vinegar over it. It was amazing. It was amazing, 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 amazing.
You're making me hungry, Stephen.
There you go.
You're making me hungry. So were you a good student in school, or how did you find school?
In the beginning, when I was very young, I used to get, because we had to take a bus into the into the school, I used to get on the bus at one stop and I would get off at the next one, you know. But I enjoyed school. To be quite honest, Carl, I'm very proud to say I never missed one day of school.
Oh.
From kindergarten to, like you say, kindergarten to when I finished school.
Gold star for that, sir.
Yeah.
What about extracurricular activities like football and sports, that kind of thing? Were you involved in any of that?
I really wasn't into the football. Cricket was very predominant at that time, or rugby. What I did play was field hockey.
Oh.
Was field hockey, because you could play it with the girls. So no,
There you go.
but I enjoyed field hockey, and you don't see much of that over here, but I did enjoy field hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you finished school, how long did it take you to decide I'm going to be a chef, or were you thinking about other things as well?
No, it was really from the get-go. I mentioned 14, and I started this thing. I had to make a decision. Well, I didn't have to make a decision. Was I going to go on to community college to do something locally? Again, from a small little village of 1,000 people, I started the Christmas before, this was 72, the Christmas before, starting writing away to hotels in London. I wrote to the Savoy, I wrote to Claridge's, to the Dorchester, and I also wrote to a company called Grand Metropolitan Hotels, which was a chain of hotels throughout the whole of the UK. And I received 2 replies back and a chance to go to 2 interviews. One was at the Dorchester, and the other one was with Grand Metropolitan Hotels. And so my family my mum and dad took me down to London to have the interview. And I went to the Grand Metropolitan Hotels first, and they offered me the job. So, so at a tender young age of 16, I left my home of 1,000 people to the big city of, well, 10 million, close to 10 million people at that time, you know, and it was a life changer for sure, for sure.
So, were you then learning as an apprentice chef, basically?
I was, and actually at that time, normally as an apprentice chef or any apprenticeships, any trades, you would do what was called a day release. You would be hired by, it could be a carpenter, plumber, you'd be hired by, or a chef, you'd be hired by the company, and then you would go to the community college for 1 day a week. The other 4 days a week, you'd be working in the trade. So, and that would take 5 years to do that, you know, to be getting your journeyman's papers. When I joined Grand Metropolitan Hotels and I went to work at the St. Herman's Hotel, the first hotel in London, it was called block release. So between the summer and Christmas, I would go for 6 weeks on one block, and then between Christmas and Easter, 6 weeks another block, and then between Easter and and summer, another. So it'd be 18 weeks totally over a 2-year period. So there'd be total 36 weeks. And so we do it over 2 years as opposed to 5 years.
Is it true that one of your teachers said to you, "You'll never make a chef"?
Oh my, he was the headmaster of the school. He was the headmaster of the school. And once I realized when I wanted to go into the trade, French was, you know, there was French cuisine and you read up a little bit about it. So I took French at school. And I was the only student, only male student with all the other girls, and the headmaster was the teacher for the French. And I fretted every time I went in there. And he comes up to me and says, "You'll never make it as a chef boy," you know, and I'll prove you wrong.
Because your French wasn't good enough.
The French wasn't good. No, I was sitting in the front of the class just sweating profusely. Yeah. But anyway, I taught him wrong, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, he probably would have been surprised that not long after you went to London, you were preparing a meal for the Prime Minister of the UK, Edward Heath.
Absolutely.
And that gave you a bit of a fright, didn't it?
It did indeed.
Yeah.
Why did you have to bring that up? Anyway, it's one thing I'll never ever forget. The hotel I was working at was St. Herman's. Now we were right across the road from the Houses of Parliament. So the Prime Minister came in, and I was working in a particular section within the kitchen, which is called the garde-manger, which is the cold section, the larder. And I'd been in the kitchen, I would say, close to about 4 to 5 months. And I was left to make the Prime Minister a shrimp cocktail with a beautiful sauce Mary Rose over the top of it and everything else. So I put my hand in the container and put all the shrimp in there, and the nice chiffonade of lettuce, the nice sauce Mary Rose, the nice wedge of lemon on the side, and I was so proud of myself. So out it goes, all the shrimp were covered with this nice sauce. Well, it wasn't a minute later, the maître d' comes into the kitchen, shouts at the chef, or tells the chef, "What is this?" I'd put raw scampi in it. Raw scampi in this sauce, oh my goodness. So it started at that level, and then it came down to me, and believe you me, I felt like this big at the end of the day, but today I can laugh about it, but at the time it was, oh, you learn very quickly, So.
Did you cook at St. Herman's again, or was that the end of your...
No, it wasn't the end of my career. No, I stayed there for a year, and it was a wonderful hotel, great memories. We were not only across the road from the Houses of Parliament, but we were right across the road from New Scotland Yard as well. So it was, we got everybody there.
You went to Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that?
It was still part of the same chain, and I'd finished my apprenticeship, and once I finished my apprenticeship in London, within the chain I went to Scotland, and then I went to York, which is just close to my hometown, and then an opportunity came in Belgium, to go to Belgium, and again I was still missing that French terminology. Well, I knew the terminology, but the fluency in talking it. So I applied to see if I could go to Belgium or to Paris, one of the two, in one of our sister hotels. And an opportunity came up for Belgium, but at that particular time, we'd just joined the common market, or as we know it today, the EU. And the hotel was called L'Hotel, and it was right across from the EU, the common market. So I went there primarily to learn French. And when I got over there, everybody wanted to learn English. But the chef, the typical, right?
That's what happened.
But because we just joined the common market, so everybody else from Europe could then come into England without using a passport. It was all cross borders. But the chef I did work under was Chef Quinnock. He was from France, the south of France, but he used to be the executive chef on the SS France, the cruise ship, one of the first cruise liners. It then became the SS Norway, and well, it's no longer in existence, but it was a true honor to work underneath him. I got shouted at a lot in French. Some of it I understood, some of it I didn't. But again, everybody wanted to learn the English part of it. But I did learn some good French cuisine, right? For everything made from scratch. And oh my goodness, yeah. It was.
So back then, in the United Kingdom, in restaurants at a certain level, French was spoken a lot in the kitchens. There were a lot of French chefs.
French chefs, all terminology, ordering in the kitchen. You would have an abayeur, the chef at the center of the kitchen, who placed the orders to all the different sections, all in French, yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was all in French.
So then, after your experience in Belgium, I guess it wasn't long after that you decided you were going to seek your fortune in Canada. How did that come about?
Well, actually, the sous chef in the kitchen in L'Hotel in Belgium, he just had a season a couple of years prior to that. I worked a season at the Digby Pines, and we befriended each other. And he said, "Well, why do you apply to go there? It's for 6 months."
That's Nova Scotia.
That's in Nova Scotia. Sorry, yeah. And why do you go over there and do a summer season over there? He said, "But don't stay over there too long." And the reason being, every kitchen I'd worked at in Europe, or England and in Europe, I'd never worked with a waitress. It was all silver service. It was all white glove. And when I say silver service, we used to serve things on platters. We never served anything on a plate. It was all French, spoon and fork, and then presented at the table.
Like Downton Abbey.
Downton Abbey. There you go, you see. Yeah. So I wrote away and applied, and I went for my interview at the Penta in Paris, which just happened to be one of our sister hotels as well. So I had my interview there, and lo and behold, within 6 months, I had my working visa to just come here to the Digby Pines for the 6 months, and I stayed a little bit longer.
Now, eventually, you met your lovely wife, Pat, in Canada, and you met her in a hotel, which doesn't sound quite right, but anyway, you literally did meet her in a hotel.
We did, yeah. After I left the Digby Pines, I decided, well, halfway through the season, I decided that I'd like to stay in Canada. And several companies approached us, whether it be CN, CP, the Hilton, and Four Seasons, asked if we wanted to stay, but it was always on a working visa to extend it. But Holiday Inns, who I swore I'd never work for, you know.
Why was that?
It wasn't of the level that I'd been trained at,
right?
You know, and but they offered landed immigrancy without going back to the UK. They just sent us down to Buffalo, and they hired me. They hired us, actually. There was 4 of us from the UK, and it's the best thing I ever did. Because number one, meeting my wife, which would lead up to, but I was based out of London, Ontario, and at that time they decentralized everything. And when I said that, there was no, at the time it was all set menus, the same menu in every hotel. So when you woke up in the morning, you didn't know where you were. So it was the same room, same menu, same corridors and everything. And so they opened it up, and I was part of the transitional team with that. But I did take a position with them in Owen Sound, which is just north of Toronto on Georgian Bay. And my wife worked on the front desk. That was back in '79.
Wow.
And here we are. How many years?
Over 40 years.
Yeah, over 40 years.
Over 40 years.
Yeah. There's not too many of us around.
No, now you told me once that you, in fact, have worked as a chef in every province of Canada.
Indeed, I have.
How did you manage that?
A lot of that was with the Holiday Inns. And from Toronto west, I worked 40 Holiday Inns. Because I was a transitional chef, so I went into all of those, and so it was in every province west of there, and more so coming into the Maritimes region. It was with the Canadian Pacific hotels, whether it be the Algonquin, which I was working at prior to coming to Newfoundland, and the Chateau Halifax, Digby Pines, of course, and then the Hotel Charlottetown as well. So
you told me a funny story once, and it had to do with a hot frying pan and an elevator.
Oh, yes.
Tell me the story.
Okay. Well, everybody goes by the smells. If you walk by somebody's house on a barbecue, and it's all about the smells and the food. Oh, I've got to cook that tonight, you know. And so there are occasions in the hotels, and I've only worked in hotels. I've never worked in freestanding restaurants because I like the challenge of the hotels. And it could be a quiet night, maybe a Sunday night or something like that, and restaurants very, very quiet. But you know, there's quite a few guests in the hotel. So I used to get an old piece of flank steak, sear it really well, get some nice smoke in it, and then I would just go up and down the elevators. So everybody got the smells going and everything else, you know. It worked, you know. You could guarantee within about 20 minutes there was people knocking on the door.
Smell the steak, and the next thing.
Yeah, here they come. Yeah.
So how did you end up coming here to Newfoundland?
Well, Carl, I'd worked in every province. This is one of the early provinces, well, the only province I hadn't been to, and this was back in '88. And there was a posting on the board for 3 months. Nobody applied for it. Nobody applied. Why? Because I was Newfoundland promoted at that time. It was 3 fishermen holding the cod on a postcard, sou'westers, gummy boots, no teeth, but they were smiling. So I said, so the general manager came to me and he said, would you like to go for an interview? What they were doing is just dangling a carrot. And I said, sure, I'll go for a free weekend. So, but I said, I'd like my wife to come as well. So they flew us here, and it's the best thing we ever did.
Yeah.
You know, I accepted the job at the Hotel Newfoundland, Canadian Pacific Hotels.
And since you've been here, you've gotten to cook for some pretty high-powered people.
Absolutely.
One being Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Tell us about that.
Well, it was indeed an honour, and that was in '97, and it was the founding celebrating the 500th anniversary of the founding of Newfoundland, and she came. She stayed for 4 nights, 5 days, and stayed at the hotel, and she ate every meal off the menu, other than the gala dinner. And at the end of it, I got the honour to meet her personally with Prince Philip. In private, and it was an amazing time, that's for sure. And then the following year, we went over as a team. There's 5 chefs to open the refurbished Canada House. And do you know something? She recognized me, and she came over. And that's totally unheard of.
Wow.
Totally unheard of. And yeah, it was certainly a thing.
What was her favorite thing that you cooked for her?
Well, to be quite honest, I think it was the roast duck. She always brought it. She mentioned the roast duck, and it was slow roasted, nice and crispy. It was a traditional duck à l'orange, and but she mentioned it, so I think that was probably one.
The restaurant, the fancy restaurant in the hotel was the Cabot Club.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is no more.
No.
Why do you think so many people miss the Cabot Club?
I think it was the service, the ambiance, the food, and at the time, the view. We had a spectacular view of looking over the harbour. And for some people, it was just for a special occasion. It could be an anniversary, a birthday. It could be somebody's 100th birthday. We had a lot of regulars as well, you know. But I truly think it was the service, the attention to detail, and we were all so proud of it. Everybody in the hotel was just so proud of it.
A nice memory
it is.
To end on, and thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you, Karl. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you've enjoyed your 27 minutes in the limelight.
I will never forget it.
And that's it for this edition of Karl Wells' Point to Point. Thank you for watching. See you again next time.
If you want convenience, Marie's Mini Mart is here for you. A one-stop shop for a variety of products, home-style breads, sandwiches, plus check out our freshly baked artisan breads and single-serve desserts exclusively at our in-store bakery on Frecker Drive. With 25 locations, wherever you go, there we are.
If you have a comment about this program, we'd love to hear it. Email or call us, or send us your feedback through social media.
At the repair shop, one thing's for sure. If it matters to you, they'll take care of it.
What have we got in the box then?
These are my father's ploughing trophies.
This belongs to my great-grandmother, Mabel.
We'll try not to keep you apart for too long.
We'll assemble it and we'll see what it does.
Let's give it a whirl.
I'm so looking forward to seeing Louise's face.
There's heart and soul in everything that leaves the repair shop. New season Wednesdays at 9 on Make.
Was that 4 or 5? He's lost count and still thinks he can drive. Do you think he knows that when he is caught and charged with impaired driving, he'll lose his license and a lot more? If he gets in his car, he'll face costs exceeding $20,000. Does he realize he could have a criminal record for his choice to drive? And it could be much worse if he crashes. I wonder what he'll be thinking tomorrow.
I'm for have a Holden 115.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? It's your boy DC, Thursday night host of Rogers Out of the Fog.
Right, you kind of got to make your own fun.
Yeah.
Which was a transition for me, going into the morning show here.
Proud. Keep doing the amazing work, will you?
They're learning about how to hire people.
20 years of local matter, so join me every Thursday night and see what's going on in the fog.
Welcome to Let's Get Writing. I'm your host, Catherine Taylor. It's a pleasure to be here today. Let's Get Writing is all about the writing process, but sometimes it goes much deeper, and that is the case this week. My guest this week has been assisting Santa in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador for almost 40 years. He completes almost 50 visits annually, from parades to hospitals and seniors' homes to special events. He has had over 1,500 visits with Santa, and he is the only living Canadian Santa inducted into the International Santa Claus Hall of Fame. And he's also a Knight of St. Nicholas. So please join me in welcoming Bruce Templeton to the show, and I'm going to bring him up in the screen right now.
Merry Christmas. It is wonderful to be here.
Now that's a beautiful sound if ever I've heard it. Not everyone can do that. I guess you've had a bit of practice.
Just a little.
And has this year been a busy year for you, Bruce, as well? Same as usual, or have things slowed down with COVID?
No, they haven't slowed down at all. You learn the technology, so there have been many more Zoom calls. But no, it hasn't slowed down at all. If anything, it's increased.
Well, that's good. It worked well for me as well. So I'm able to reach people like you without having to leave central Newfoundland. And if everyone doesn't know, I do want to say that Bruce is in St. John's and I'm here in Grand Falls, Windsor, and technology brings us together. Bruce, it's been a pleasure talking to you this week. And if people are not familiar with what you do, I wanted to go back a little bit. I know we are going to talk about your book, but I wanted to go back to how it all started. How did your role in bringing this joy to people begin?
Well, first of all, I had in a prior career, my wife and I had moved all over Canada and in the U.S. We said, enough of this. We came home. And in 1978, an aunt of mine, they've named a building after her on Duckworth Street, Miss Anna Templeton. She was the director of crafts for the province, and she asked if I would play Santa at St. Andrew's Church. So I went off and I considered it. All I could find was cotton wool and flannelette, which I didn't like. I went back to Aunt Anna and said, "No, Aunt Anna, and you didn't say no to Miss Anna Templeton." Anna said, "If I make the suit, will you do it?" And that was the beginning of what showed up in my house was velvet and lamb's wool and brass and prescription glasses and leather gloves. And that was the beginning of my adventure with Santa.
And it's quite a suit. We can see your hat there, and I've many photographs of you. Actually, I do want to show this one because it's certainly beautiful. I have to find the right one here. Well, this shows you, here we go. I just want to put this one in the stream. This is you in all your glory.
There it is.
Yeah, absolutely an amazing suit. And I can just imagine when people encounter you, how they feel. So a lot goes into this, Bruce. I mean, we see Santas everywhere this time of year, but not Santas like you or Santas who've had your experience. Can you talk a bit about that? Why are the Santas in the Hall of Fame so different and so amazing?
Well, I can only describe the levels that personally I have gone through. So, and I describe this, I may or may not be right or wrong. I simply say there are level 1 Santas and you can hire them. And for many, many of my colleagues, it's a business. And it's $100 a visit or $200 a visit or so much an hour. And if that's what they want to do, well, that's okay. But that wasn't what I set out to do. First of all, I've been very fortunate. I did not need any income from it. Look, we have an elf barking in the background.
Oh, we do ever. The plow just came by. I'm going to mute me for a minute.
So what happened is that in the beginning, for maybe a year, I played Santa. And then you get to be so confident at this and so good at it that you lie on the floor and the kids climb all over your back and they pull on your hair. And you really start to believe this after a while. There we are at the children's rehab. Special place in my heart for the rehab kids and their parents. Many of these kids didn't choose to have some of the afflictions, the diseases that they have, and they're very special parents that are with them. So you become very close and you become very drawn to these children and these families. And then the really tough ones come, the ones where in the seniors' home they say, "Santa, we need to go to such and such a room. Somebody's passing away. They'd like to see Santa before they die." The little baby that you're looking at on the screen, that baby passed away. So that took me into the third area, and I think that's where I am now. So I met St. Nicholas. There's Jacob. So there are many kids that Santa has seen. There's Nevaeh. There she is, the little lemonade girl. And Santa has seen many, many kids over the years, and I had been with many children that were not alive a year later. So it becomes, in the end, I'll be careful how I use the phrase, but it can become a ministry. And that's why I've written the 4 books now. I wanted to share with the public, share with the readers, what it's like to be inside the world of Santa and St. Nicholas.
I'll unmute myself again because the peanut gallery there was having quite a time with the snowplow, but they've settled down again. They like to make their appearance. And you know, it's interesting as we come back to the fact that you wrote this book and In Search of St. Nicholas. So I think in that book, if which is available through Flanker Press, and in that book, you describe that journey of, you know, your transition from just simply being Santa to of a lifelong commitment, really, to this role and the joy and the involvement. And but also as part of that book, you talk about many of the traditions that we take, you know, for granted today, how they came about in a beautiful story. And maybe you could just talk a little bit about the book.
Well, first, in my head for years, I mean, I clearly have become, I don't know, very closely connected to all of the mythology, the myths, the stories that go back for years. So I wanted to trace the history. And I keep reminding children, Santa was in a class this morning at an elementary school here. When you read The Night Before Christmas and all through the house, Santa Claus is not in the book. When you think about he was lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. So I wanted to go back in time. So all I did was I started back and I took the Coca-Cola Santa, and then I went back and described Silent Night was first sung when the organ broke down in a little town, and the organist said we had to cancel the singing. And a woman looked up at the stars on Christmas Eve, and she said, "You can't cancel the church service. It's such a silent night. It's such a holy night." So they got a guitar and they went into the little church, and that was the first time Silent Night was ever sung. So then I wanted to go back. St. Nicholas was a little boy, 342 A.D. He died. His parents died when he was 12. They left him a very wealthy boy, and he went to live then in a monastery. He felt very badly that he had all this money, so he went out one night. He walked down the street. He saw 3 girls whose mother had died. Their stockings were hanging by the fire. They were drying, and Nicholas put his hand in his pocket and he put gold coins in their stockings. So Nicholas went on to be the Bishop of Myra. And for those people who are interested in it, the Nicene Creed, the Council of Nicaea, the decision as to when Easter was going to be, the whole idea of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, Nicholas was part of all of those decisions.
And that wasn't your first book either. I think we should let people know you've written 3 books prior to this one.
Yeah, the first one I wrote was called The Man in the Red Suit. And that was the beginning of my adventure. And one of the chapters in there that I enjoyed writing the most, and I think about it even now, is there's a picture in there of my wife, Paula, and her mother, and my daughter. So what that's all about is they're making cookies. And this morning, when at the elementary school, the children said, "Hey, Santa, what's your favorite kind of cookie?" And I'm very hesitant to tell them the cookie that Santa likes the most is the one that you make with your mommy and your daddy and your granny and your grampy. Because I can just imagine 500 kids showing up at home tonight saying to mom and dad a week before Christmas, "We're going to make cookies." But I still feel that it's your presence, not presence, that counts. And I believe you get one chance to make a memory for a child. So get out the flour and the rolling pin and the butter and the sugar and it's all about, you know, I'm still convinced that years later, very few people can remember what they got under a tree, but they can remember the time they spent with their families. So with this awful COVID coming back, if it is coming back again, get outside, go for a walk in the snow, make a snowman, just make memories for your children. And we have to have some hope for the future. And I absolutely believe that it's the time you will spend with your family this Christmas. That is what you will treasure the most.
That's a beautiful message, Bruce. And I'm getting a little feedback here, but hopefully it goes away. That's a beautiful message. And I think quite often we've been in our lives so busy. And I think that's one of the things that COVID has done. It's slowed us down. It's kept us closer to home and perhaps given us an appreciation for our families and friends and things that we can't always do that we used to do. But it hasn't all been a bad thing if one is to find the silver lining inside of this experience, that we are appreciating when we have time with family and when we can do these things. And so thank you so much for that reminder. It's I think a lot of people are going to be taking you up on that.
Well, the other thing I'd like to tell you, talk about writing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wrote my manuscript for book number 1. 2 publishers turned me down. Finally, I found someone who said, we'd love to do this. You're a good storyteller. We like your ability to market. You're just a terrible writer, that's all. So someone took my editors, took my lump of coal, and they polished it into something very beautiful. So I would say to anybody who wants to write, first of all, do it. And then stay with what you know best and surround yourself with the people who are good at the things that you're no good at. And you have to trust your editor. You have to trust that it'll all work out. And I hope you enjoy sitting signing books as much as I do.
Well, I think you enjoy meeting people. I don't think you could be doing what you're doing without a love of people and a genuine joy to give and to give deeply from your heart. So when you began the process and you took on Santa Claus, that obviously wouldn't have been where you were at that time. And as it evolved, how was that for you? Did you expect this to be a lifelong mission for yourself? We're talking over 40 years.
I don't know what I expected. All I knew was that I had a determined aunt. And then when I did go into the church that year, the minister sat and asked the children, did they have their letter written to Santa yet? And one little boy said, no, I wrote my letter to Santa last year and he didn't bring me what I wanted, so I'm going to go straight to God this year. And I just loved the humor of the children. And then when I started to get into the hospital and started to see children there, my daughter here is a pediatric cardiologist. And my daughter says that a child in pain is something that is difficult because in many cases, the child didn't do anything to cause their pain. It isn't obesity or over drinking or smoking or whatever. I mean, the child did nothing to cause their pain. Another thing that I realized when I'm in the John Howard Society and one of the parents is in jail, the child didn't make that decision. So when a child says, Santa, can you let my daddy out of jail for Christmas? These are the moments for me that are very special. So it was my connection to the children that keeps me going. And we're a week away. And between now and Christmas Eve, I will meet 2 children that are terminal, and they will not be alive next Christmas. So Santa will meet them. Santa will give them. Santa starts out every year. I have 48 teddy bears. They all have their own little scarves and their own little masks. Santa's own Teddy 2021. And I will give away 48 of these in the next couple of days. And they're very special teddy bears.
And Bruce, why do children think so much of Santa as bringing gifts and so on, but you seem to make a different connection with them. In almost, I don't know, it's surreal, but how do you think that they view Santa after they have that connection with you and they talk to you? Does it change at all, do you feel?
Well, there's certainly magic in it. I can't say enough about Mrs. Claus. So while it is true that Santa and I have been friends for 43 years, I have a bride who's put up with me for 53 years, and she has been part of my journey. So when we do the Santa Claus parade, Santa's in his sleigh, and there's a wonderful assistant out on the road, and the wonderful assistant in the blue coat is saying, and Santa can hear, the little girl in the red sweater is Catherine. And then Santa from the top of the sleigh turns and says, "Hello, Catherine Taylor. Merry Christmas." So it's all about magic. And one year was really sweet. A lady came in, I'll tell you this story quickly. A lady came in and she had a little pin. And she said, "Can you put this pin in your hat? It's very important." So I did that, and I asked her why, and she said, "Because my son has come home and said Santa's a fake." So what we did was, I said, "Where are you going to be on the parade?" So she said they were going to be down on Duckworth Street. I got the kids' names, and then Santa called down from the sleigh and said, "Look, Santa's got your pin. Hello, David. Hello, Billy. Hello, Jacob. Yes, we got your pin." And it's really sweet when you look down and you see the little kid's chin drop, and you see tears coming from mother's eyes. So you have to keep the magic. And I couldn't do what I do without Mrs. Claus, who snuck into the room. And
yes. She's welcome to come on the show if she'd like to say hello. But it is true. You know, behind every good Santa, there's a good Mrs. Claus. I really feel that. And thank you both for all the wonderful work you've been doing. I'm just going to show this picture again here. This is a Santa convention, I believe. Is it, Bruce? So would these be the most wonderful Santas in the world here?
Well, that one was in Denver, Colorado, and so that's an international conference. There were 600 colleagues there from all over the world, and yes, they get together. And that was the one where they asked me to come. I was the keynote speaker at that convention. But yes, we get together. The protocols of Santa have changed dramatically. So, for example, you do training classes at these. You learn how to say Merry Christmas in American Sign Language. You learn about the protocols of never have photographs taken until you can see both of Santa's hands. There's no children sitting on Santa's knee anymore. So the protocols and the proper way for Santa to behave, that changes with society. And that's part of the reason that we all get together.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense. I want to go back to how we do this in sign language. Let's teach everyone. We have a wonderful opportunity to do that. Show us how to say.
As soon as you're finished. You roll your hands forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make the letter C. Right. So you're doing Merry Christmas.
Christmas. Okay, everyone out there, now you know how to do this in American Sign Language, thanks to Bruce.
Merry Christmas in ASL. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing to be able to do.
I taught 500 children to do that this morning.
Did you? Yeah, well, maybe we'll teach a whole other audience here through the show. We reach a number of people throughout Newfoundland and also throughout the world on our platform. So we'll try to spread the word on how to do that. So from when you started, and tell me a little more about the Santa Hall of Fame, what that meant to you, and how did you end up in the Santa Claus Hall of Fame?
The Santa Claus Hall of Fame was a complete surprise. I actually got a call one night from the Hall of Fame to say that I'd been nominated and then selected. Now, the honest truth is I didn't even know that it existed. But where I did get a surprise was when I started to learn that I would be joining the Hall of Fame. And then there was another part of all of this when we talked about the ministry of Nicholas. Then I got down on my knees, and they had a big sword, and I was knighted as a knight of St. Nicholas. But when you look at the people in the Santa Claus Hall of Fame, and when you look at the American actor Mickey Rooney, When you look at Haddon Sandblom, I mean, over Christmas, you're going to turn on your TV and you're going to see an old black and white movie, and that's Edmund Gwynn. And when you look at, you know, the original movie about Miracle on 42nd Street, Edmund Gwynn is there. Haddon Sandblom is the one who did the Coca-Cola Santa. So there are, I mean, I'm in an amazing group. I don't deserve to be there. But these are the world's leading Santas. And there's only 24 in the world that are in the Hall of Fame.
Amazing. Well, I do think you do deserve to be there, but I appreciate your humbleness for sure. When you were writing the book, you told me a couple of very interesting stories, and I'd like you to at least share one of them about how you were getting permissions to use certain things in the books and a few roadblocks you came across.
Well, I'd say to any budding author, there are going to be roadblocks. And there's a thing about trademarks, and be awfully careful of trademarks, because once you take a name and use it, then you have to make sure. So you'll learn about 91 years and anything older than 91 years. So 91 years is considered to be in the public domain. So when you quote from A Night Before Christmas and All Through the House, Clement Moore, you can do that. You cannot say one word about Rudolph. Rudolph is trademarked in New York. And you can get yourself in a lot of trouble if you make any reference to Rudolph in a book without their permission.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoyed, as I was writing the book, Rudolph is in my book. The Coca-Cola Santa is in my book. And I did enjoy, as I was writing the book, as I was writing the one you were holding, there's a mother who was holding a baby who was dying, and she's singing, "For one so small you seem so strong, my arms will keep you safe and warm. This bond between us cannot be broken. I will be here, don't you cry." And that is the theme from You'll Be in My Heart from the movie Tarzan. It was written by Phil Collins. So I decided I wanted to put that in the book. I sent the chapter down to Disney. I said, well, can I do this? They wrote me back and said, absolutely not. So then I thought, well, why don't we write Phil Collins? So we sent a letter to England. We got a beautiful letter back from Phil Collins to say, I would be thrilled if you would put my words in your book. So I would say to any author, you're going to run into roadblocks. Don't give up.
Mm.
If you are determined to do it, you will find a way.
I have no doubt. And Phil Collins definitely went to the top of my list on this one, that he did take the time to respond and to make that possible for you. That's very nice, because many times we think of people like Phil Collins as being unreachable, but indeed they are not. And you've proven that. Or it was the magic of Santa.
Well, the one other quick story, because I know you were watching the time. The phone rang one night. The voice said, my name is Michael Marks. My father was Johnny Marks. My father wrote Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the song. And Michael Marks gave me permission because he said, you're the first one who figured out that Rudolph wasn't handicapped. Rudolph wasn't disabled. He was a little reindeer with a red nose. And in every school and in every classroom, there's a child that's different. And all they want is to be loved and appreciated for who they are. So they gave me permission in New York to put Rudolph in the book.
Now, this must have taken a fair bit of work on your part to get through all of this. From when you started the book and I'm holding it in my hands, did it, was it a year, less, more?
I don't know. There's another one in my head now. I've learned in the last couple of years, and your readers must be interested in this, all 9 of the reindeer, Dasher, Comet, Vixen, Cupid, all of the reindeer are female. All of them. There are no male reindeer. So I'm writing a new book now all about the 9 female reindeer.
I'm liking it. I'm thinking that this is going to be a popular book. And the way a couple of their names had evolved, I read the books that my guests bring to me, and I thoroughly enjoyed your book, and certainly the heartstrings. At times, I know how difficult it must be for the role that you play for children and elderly who are not well and who are at the end of life. And it takes someone special, Bruce, and it takes a special touch to do that. Do you find it hard to continue with that, or are you quite able to handle it?
I'll do it this way. I was with Dr. Templeton one night, my daughter Christina. So we get to the door in pediatric cardiology. She said, you have to go through the door alone, Santa. The baby's burned 90% of her body. So I put my head down and I had a little chat with St. Nicholas. And I said, Nicholas, go and prepare the way for me that I will not be alone. So I find myself now in very difficult times. I have a chat with St. Nicholas, and then Santa and St. Nicholas can do some amazing things together.
Beautiful. Well, I think everyone wants to hear this show end with a greeting from Santa. Do you think you could accommodate us?
Merry Christmas. Oh, Jesus.
I try to emulate that. Ho, ho, ho. You have it down just right.
Merry Christmas.
I want to thank you so much. I know this is a busy season for you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and talk about your adventures and your writing. Have a wonderful Christmas to you and Mrs. Claus.
Thank you.